So today we're going to talk about hunt series number 2, which is putting a plan together for season-long success. And in hunt series 1, I talked about shot placement and where to aim. So I started at the end. Because I wanted archers, because it's end of July, early August when I started this series. I wanted you guys to be able to at least get my opinion on where to aim so you could start thinking about that and practicing. So I started at the end, but now I want to come all the way back to the beginning. And this is my strategy or my plan, and it has been for probably 25 years. And I want to go on saying, and this isn't a brag and pat myself on the back kind of thing, but I want you guys to understand this is my strategy, but it's been a successful one. So just about every single year in the past 25 years, I've either killed a mature buck or 2, or I've passed on mature bucks that I could have killed just because I wanted them to go another year to be able to hunt them. I didn't want my season to end. So this has been a successful strategy for me. So I'm not just spouting this stuff off, but it really hasn't worked. And when I say a buck, I'm talking about big mature bucks. So this is my strategy for season-long success for killing big bucks and putting the least amount of pressure on them. So my goal, I need to talk a little bit about my goals when I'm hunting, is I want to be able to hunt as much as I possibly can. I want to have fun doing it. I want to be able to take my son out and my daughter out and my wife out, and when my friends come down or my nephew, I want to have fun. So that's another goal of mine. I want to kill a mature buck every year. And I also don't want to put pressure on my property because I want to be able to attract and hold bucks on my property and on my areas where I hunt, even my permission farms, so that they aren't going off to neighboring farms and getting killed at an age class or at a level where I'm not going to want to kill them or my wife's not going to want to kill them. So that's I just want to kind of give an introduction because your goals might be different. So those are my goals. So I want to talk, this is my season-long strategy, and I have some notes here, so I'm going to be looking back and forth on my laptop. So in the early season, so basically from season opener, and that's, in my life, that's been mid-September, so I'm talking mid-September until late October. We'll get into that later, but the early season when it's green, before some heavy frost, I'm hunting bed-to-feed patterns. I'm looking for a bed-to-feed pattern. I'm hunting transition plots or my pass-through plots, as we talk about a lot. I'm hunting mostly, if not all, evening sits. I'm watching for changing food sources. So I'm watching for, let's say, an early combined cornfield. That can be a highly attractive food source. Let's say it's an alfalfa field. Green alfalfa, lush alfalfa is probably one of the most highly attractive green food sources for whitetails. But what if there's a late cutting of hay? What if there's an early frost? That'll change that food source instantly. So I'm watching for that. Are acorns falling or are acorns running out? Is that coming to an end? So I want to look for the most attractive green food source available. For me, that's usually an alfalfa field, but it can be a food plot, can be a clover plot. And what I'm looking for in these are destination type green fields. And I'm not hunting those destination type green fields, but I'm trying to cut them off between their bedding and their feeding, their destination feeding. And a lot of times if I am hunting a food source that time of year, it's a transition or it's a pass-through food source on their way to destination food. Rarely will I hunt a destination food source in the early season. In the early season, I will oftentimes hunt hot spots of buck sign. So if I know there's a big buck in the area, or maybe it's even early, middle September, like season opener in Wisconsin, for example, and they're still bachelor grouped up, and I'm on a nice buck, and there's a big mature buck. I killed one this way about 20 years ago, probably my biggest buck to date as far as weight, and I think it was 238 pounds field dressed. But there was a point that came out, and it was just hammered with rubs and scrapes, fresh rubs and fresh scrapes on some soybeans that hadn't turned yellow yet. So it was the hottest ticket in town as far as green food source and the hottest ticket in town as far as fresh buck sign, and I killed that buck the second weekend of Wisconsin's archery season. So that would have been I want to say that year was like September 23rd. So I looked for really fresh buck sign adjacent to a preferred food source that time of year. Early season, I'm also going off of camera data. So I'm spot checking cameras when I can get in and check a camera with the right wind, or maybe during a light rain, something where I'm not actually putting pressure on the deer. I'm doing it at midday, or maybe I'm doing it when I'm going in to actually sit and hunt. If there's a camera, then I'll pull cards. So if there's camera data that shows there's a mature buck that I want to kill, then I'll take advantage of that camera data. The early season, I will also do a ton of observation sits. Now you got to remember, I'm hunting all season long, and I'm trying to hunt every day if I possibly can. So I'm doing a bunch of observation sits. I'll sit fence lines, I'll sit on the ranger, I'll sit on a hill, like a hilltop or somewhere where I can just see a ton of acreage, and I'll do a bunch of observation sits in the early season. A lot of times I'm taking my bow with me, but I'm sitting way back where I can just observe a lot. And a lot of times then you can put a hunt together by just seeing deer movement. They're coming to this lush alfalfa field, but where are they coming? What draw are they using? What fence line are they using? Is there a fence jump that they're using, or are they coming down here and using this the end of a fence? Because I don't have hundreds of cameras, so I'm using these observation sits to tell me where I can go and capitalize on that buck movement. I want to give like an honorable mention for the early season. The early season, if you feel you need to harvest does, or you want to harvest does, I believe the early archery season is the best time to kill does on your property, to put the least amount of pressure on your property. And because if you kill a doe before a buck has displaced or has dispersed, and this is a whole other topic that we'll have to get into in a different video, but bucks disperse. They leave their home range. They leave their mothers from their first birthday. So in the spring, when they just start putting on their first set of antlers. So in the spring of their first birthday until the first fall, there's a big group of bucks that disperse in the spring, and then the rest of them disperse in the fall. And the vast majority of bucks disperse from their maternal home range, and they just leave. And they set up their home range, and there's a whole bunch of data on this. 3 to 10 miles away, they'll set up their home range. That will be their home range for the rest of their life. So what I'm trying to do is not only harvest does in the early season to put least amount of pressure on my property, but radio collar deer studies have also shown that if you harvest a doe with that buck fawn in her, in that buck fawn's basically when it's only 6 months old, or before that yearling or year and a half old buck has displaced, there's a much better chance that that buck will not disperse, and they will stay, and their home range will be the maternal home range. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and that, like I said, I'm getting off topic a little bit. There's a whole discussion about buck dispersal, but my point is, shooting does, to me, is the easiest, and the easiest way to put the least amount of pressure on your property is on a morning hunt. You can go in after the sun is up. You can sit a food source, so now your target bucks are already back to bed. They're already 200, 300, 400 yards away from you. You can sneak in during the daylight, and those does are typically bedding close to food sources, and they'll pop back out for a late morning, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, feeding close to the bedding area, and you can shoot that doe, watch her run off 50, 60 yards away. She drops, you can drag her out, and it's the least amount of pressure. You're not having to shoot her in the evening when you have a chance of that buck coming through. And you're taking advantage of the science behind buck dispersion. So now let's go into what I would say is like the pre-rut. The early pre-rut, I'm not going to get caught up on or hung up on terms. But what I'm talking about is there's that early season, which isn't really rut. It's bed to feed pattern type hunting. And now for me, where I live right now, peak breeding, this is when the does are actually getting bred, is November 15th. Year in and year out, it's always November 15th, and I can do this. I know this is true because I can see when the fawns are being born, and I can go back to 200 days, and every year it's November 15th is peak breeding. So for me, what starts a transition from that strictly early season bed to feed type hunting is about 20 days. So this would be a calendar way of doing it, about 20 days before peak breeding. So around October 25th or 26th in my area is when I'll say, okay, I want to start thinking about hunting more of a rut, ease my way into the rut type hunting, and I'll ease my way into hunting some morning sits. The other thing that'll trigger that for me, regardless of the date, so regardless of the date, is if that first hot doe, if I witness that first hot doe coming into heat, that'll trigger I'll switch from a bed to feed. It's not that I still won't hunt a bed to feed pattern, but I'll switch from only thinking bed to feed to now I'm gonna start thinking more rut, travel corridors, and things where bucks are gonna be more moving, they're gonna be on their feet more than just a bed to feed pattern. And I'll use that as just a quick story. In late October of 2021, my wife had a phenomenal sit. And I want to say it was around October 26th that you'll see on the picture that I'm going to put in the video, but she saw like 15 or 20 does and bucks that night. It was just nuts because there was a hot doe. And she saw this buck we called Ranger, a giant at the time, 215-inch buck. She saw that buck that night and would have killed him if she had a south wind, but she had a north wind that night, so she couldn't sit where she saw a Ranger come through a fence, jump in a ditch crossing, and work the scrape, and we got a picture of him in that scrape. Let's fast forward. 2022, I used that data to say, okay, Ranger was on his feet late October. It was right around the same time, so October 28th, I went into this same area, same type of strategy, bed to feed pattern, but it's a lot more active pattern because you might have that first hot doe coming in the heat and I kill Ranger on that bed to feed pattern, but in kind of a rut mode because he's out already, coming a little bit earlier, looking for that first hot doe. So that's an example of using that first hot doe theory and past information on bucks. If you're able to watch bucks from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, you can use that past information to know when they're going to transition to different areas. And that's what I did when I killed Ranger. So I'll ramp up how aggressive I get starting around, like I said, around the 25th of October. I'll kind of ramp that up. I'll start hunting mornings. And the other thing I wanted to mention about mornings is if you're a weekend hunter, if you're not hunting every single day, and let's say the weekend is the 25th and 26th, Saturday, Sunday, and it's not ideal conditions for you, I'd probably still go because you're a weekend hunter. And now if you don't hunt that, you're waiting 7 days before you start hunting mornings. For me, it's not so much the date as it is the first hot doe, and or the 25th or 26th is also triggered with an event where I can get into a morning stand and be aggressive and hunt mornings, but not completely blow out my farm. So I'll give you an example. If it's the 25th of October, 26th of October, I still have not witnessed the first hot doe or seen signs, and that again, that's another video of what would tell me that the first hot doe has triggered those bucks in my area to be active and on their feet. If I haven't seen that and I get up in the morning to hunt and there's zero wind, there's absolutely no wind, and you can hear a pin drop from 100 yards, and I really don't have a good spot where I want to get into, let's say the downside of bedding where I think a big buck is bedding, then I probably won't go that morning. On the flip side of that, same exact scenario, but I wake up and there's 15 or 20 mile an hour winds, and let's say the winds are out of the east and I've been waiting for an east wind to hunt this one morning spot because I feel that's close to where a buck is bedding, but I can get in nice and quiet because there's 20 mile an hour winds. Well, that's a scenario where I'm going to be all over that. And I'm going to ease, I call it easing in, but I'm going to be real aggressive because I can get in there on that windy day. It's also this time of year for about this, I want to say it's almost a month because you talk about the 25th of October if you're using the dates. Peak breeding is the 15th. And then to me, it falls off much faster than it ramps up. So it takes about 20 days where this buck activity really ramps up and peaks. Unless you have an early hot doe, then it just skyrockets. But on the backside of peak breeding, so by me, peak breeding is the 15th, by about the 25th of November, it's drastically, it's really tapered off, and the bucks are already headed back to kind of a bed to feed pattern. Even though there's some does that are coming into heat, it really falls off fast. So you're looking at October 25th until November 25th. That's a whole month in there where I'm going to be pretty aggressive. I'm going to hunt a lot of mornings. I wouldn't say every morning, but a lot of mornings. Probably 3/4 of the mornings I'm going to hunt. Probably 3/4 of the evenings I'm going to hunt, if not every evening. And I'm going to be pretty aggressive. But I'm also going to not hunt just bed to feed patterns. I'm going to hunt my fence jumps, my travel corridors, my funnels, my ditch crossings. Even if that ditch crossing isn't necessarily associated with a bed to feed pattern, maybe it's just bed to bed where those bucks are cruising, that's where I'm really going to start being more aggressive and hunting those travel type corridor areas and situations is during this month period. Also in this period, I want to mention this, and I'm going to use Wisconsin as an example because I hunted for 30 years in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's gun season is always that week of Thanksgiving, and then following the week of Thanksgiving is their muzzleloader season. If you are trying to attract and hold bucks on your property to protect them, to get them to their next age class, if that's one of your goals, if that's what you're trying to do, then I would start backing off my aggressiveness and how much you're hunting and the amount of pressure you're putting on the deer. Probably a good half a week to even 10 days before that Wisconsin rifle season opener, I would start backing off. And then for me, I would not hunt that primary, what I would call like a primary gun season, because that's when the most hunting pressure is going to be in your area, almost guaranteed. I've never seen it not be. And the most bucks are going to be shot that are not as big as you would have liked them to be. So in other words, there's going to be bucks that you're going to pass that you want to get to grow to the next age class. They're going to get shot during that 9-day gun season by somebody else if they leave your property. That's the highest chance that that's going to happen. So what I would recommend as a strategy is to start backing off on how aggressive you are bow hunting, even though you're in your prime, because you want deer to feel comfortable coming into your property and staying on your property and using your destination food sources on your property. And again, that's another entire video. But back off on the hunting pressure and then skip the 9-day gun season. And for me, I want to hunt as much as I possibly can, but I'll sacrifice a 9-day gun season and then I'll come back and I'll hunt that muzzleloader season. So I'm getting the same week. Maybe it's not 9 days, maybe now it's 7 days, because I'm giving up that Saturday and Sunday on the back end. But I still get to hunt that 7-day gun season with a muzzleloader. But now I'm going back into my property when there's 90% less hunters out there, and it's given me the greatest opportunity on my farm or where I hunt for deer to come in and feel like that's a safe haven and they won't leave. That gives me, it's never a guarantee, absolutely not a guarantee, but it gives the best chance that those deer are going to come into that area on my property and stay. So now we've talked about early season, we've talked about pre-rut and easing my way into the rut and then being aggressive, backing off at the gun seasons. Now let's use that same example of Wisconsin. Now I'll go back, and now I'm hunting bed to feed again, only bed to feed. Typically I'm only hunting evening sits. So now I'm looking at late November all the way through December, and early January, depending on where you are. And now I'm hunting only evenings, and now for the first time, I will sit my destination food sources of primarily soybeans and corn. And I'll hunt those in a way where I'm sitting back. So that destination food source is out in front of me, and I have my blind as far back as I can be, where I feel I'm effective, let's say with that muzzleloader. So if I have a muzzleloader that I feel comfortable shooting out to 150 yards, I'm going to push that envelope, and I'm going to keep that soybean and corn destination plot out there, so that at the end of the evening, hopefully I can get down and get out of there. And that's where these strategies of like these plot screens or planting switchgrass or things like that to screen that food plot off really helps. And then my blinds are only 5-6 feet off the ground. I don't put these big towers up that are 15 feet up. I'll sacrifice being able to see a little bit so that when I get down out of my stand, now I can sneak out in the grass. I'm using switchgrass is over my head. I can kind of drop down a little bit, and those deer out in that corn and soybeans, they never are the wiser. So this is the first time of year I'll hunt my destination food sources is during the late season. So that's kind of an overview of how I put my season together. It doesn't go through every single detail about every single decision I make in season, but that is the theory of how I start my season out, how I ramp up to be more aggressive during the rut, and then I ramp back down really fast and hunt the late season over destination food. And that theory, or that way of hunting, for like I said, probably 25 years, I guess I don't know, probably about 25 years, 20 for sure, has led me to basically being able to attract and hold and protect bucks on my property. So it's allowed me to put the least amount of pressure on my property while still being able to hunt almost every single day and reaching one of my goals of being able to kill a mature buck every single year, or at least having the opportunity to see and kill one and then passing it up. So I would suggest you all put a plan together based on your goals on how you can achieve your goals this fall, and then try and stick to that plan and see how it goes. And if you want to use my plan, I think it's great. It's been working for me for a long time. Hope you got a little information out of this, and that's it for Hunt Series number 2.